Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a great day. My name's Nick with the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the dangers and effects of vaping. So, whenever people talk about vaping, you either get one extreme or the other. You get the side that says that there's nothing wrong with vaping, and whenever you do vape, you're really not harming your body in any way, and it's completely fine. And then you get the other side that's almost takes the stance of like propaganda, where it uses a bunch of fluff to scare people into not vaping. And the problem with this is a lot of the time it blows things way out of proportion, and people understand that that's not exactly truthful, so they don't see them as a reliable source. I'm not a fluff guy, I'm not a hyperbole guy, so everything that I'm talking about today is going to come straight from the CDC. And my job right now is to give you guys the facts so that you understand that perfect little middle there and you can make a decision on your own. Alright, so jumping right into it, the first thing that I want to do is outline exactly what I want to accomplish by the end of this presentation. So the first thing that I want to do is inform you on exactly what vaping is and identify a few key terms that aren't exactly used in regular everyday life, so that when I mention these terms you understand what I'm talking about through the entire presentation. Second, I want to explain why teens and young adults are at a higher risk to start vaping, because these companies for sure target the younger generation because they know if the younger generation starts vaping and continues to vape, they'll make more money over time. Thirdly, I want to teach you what is in a vape and what chemicals it delivers to your body, and on top of that, explain the health risks associated with vaping. And then finally, I want to tell you how you can identify if your teen is vaping and how you can talk to them about it. Alright, so these are the terms that a lot of people won't recognize and or don't recognize when it comes to the context of vaping. The first one we have is e-cigarette. It's the term most used by media outlets to describe the device being used to vape. And the reason I put the media outlets there is because anyone who actually vapes doesn't ever refer to it as an e-cigarette. They normally just call it their vape. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of like brand recognition where someone will say, oh, that's my Juul, but for the most part, they're just going to call it a vape. The second one is vape juice. It's the actual liquid put inside of vapes that is heated up and turned into smoke to be inhaled. Then you have the coil. This isn't as common as it used to be, but it's the part of the vape that is disposable, and it's basically wire that is spun into a coil, and they put cotton inside of it. The cotton soaks up the vape juice, and that wire is what is heated up to be able to create the smoke. Pods are a lot like coils. It's mostly associated with Juul, but it comes in a little container about the size of the head of a flash drive, and instead of wrapped wire, it has almost like prongs, and the juice is already inside of it, so you don't need to buy vape juice to use your Juul pod, right? So these are completely disposable. You also just throw these away whenever they're empty. The mod, and if you look at the picture in the center here, the mod would be what the person is holding. It's the part that holds the batteries and controls the amount of power sent to the coil to be able to heat up the vape juice. And lastly, you have the tank. It's the glass container that holds the vape juice for the vape. So now that you know what I'm going to be talking about when I'm talking about it, let's go over the different types of vapes. And all vapes can relatively be put into about three categories. You have smaller vapes, pen vapes, and vape mods. So whenever we're talking about smaller vapes, Juul is for sure the most common. It's also the most popular amongst young people, especially people under the smoking age, because they're easy to hide, they're easy to carry around. They're not going to weigh you down as much as something like a vape mod would, because those can actually get pretty heavy, and they're just convenient to carry on your person. Many of them are even completely disposable. You get a few discrepancies there with Juul, which has the disposable pods, but most of them, once you finish whatever puff count they have, you can just throw them away and get another one. And then they're currently, like I said, the most popular variant. Then you have pen vapes. These were the first ones that really came onto the market as actual vapes, and they actually got a resurgence in popularity recently because of the introduction of THC infused vape juice. That's because whenever you're talking about a vape mod, it's going to deliver too much of the chemical to the person whenever they're smoking it. So the pen vapes, they give you less of the chemical, so it's not too much, you're not overdoing it. And so you really see a lot more of these recently, especially with the legalization of THC in a few different states. These are rechargeable, but normally they don't come with external batteries. And finally, you have the vape mod. Normally, this has external batteries that you take out and have to charge on an external charger. Whenever we talk about identifying different things around the house that may be your teen is vaping, that external battery charger is for sure one of them. And it's the most recognizable vape just because it is the standard of what a vape, quote unquote, is. And it creates the largest amount of smoke and is easily identifiable from a distance. So now that you know all of the terms and the different types of vapes and you are completely educated on that front, let's go into teens and vaping real quick. Let me show you a few statistics that I found pretty surprising and alarming. As of September of 2020, 19.6% of high schoolers, or about 1 in 5, reported current e-cigarette use, and 4.7% of middle schoolers, or about 1 in 20, reported current e-cigarette use. And that's a lot of teenagers and people who are younger than the legal smoking age who are vaping on a regular basis. And when you see alarming statistics like that, my first question is, okay, well, why do they want to vape? And when you ask them about that stuff, you get a few different answers. And the ones that are most common are that it's better than smoking, it tastes better, you don't feel as bad afterwards, that's valid, I understand that. Then you get the flavoring is nice, and that's because a lot of these companies are marketing their vape juice flavors after popular candies. And because they recognize that, they're like, oh, that sounds good, I want to try that one, I want to try that one. And then finally, and this is the big one, is that it is all over popular culture right now, where music videos, television shows, YouTube videos, even Twitch stuff, you see vapes everywhere. It's literally everywhere. It's impossible for people to be able to avoid that. And without proper communication, if they don't know any better, if their favorite YouTuber, their favorite Twitch person, their favorite songwriter vapes, why is it a problem if they vape? So we're going to go into exactly what chemicals are in vapes. We want to establish what exactly vaping does to your body so that open lines of communication can happen. And before we go to the next slide, I just want you to envision a number in your mind of how many chemicals do you think is in vape juice, right? You hear the horror stories about cigarettes and how many chemicals are in cigarettes, but how many chemicals are in vape juice? So if you said 4, first of all, I think you're cheating. Second of all, you would be right. So you really only have 4 chemicals that make up vape juice. You have vegetable glycerin, sometimes called VG, propylene glycol, sometimes called PG, flavoring, which can be natural or artificial. It's the same exact flavoring that's in a lot of processed foods. And then nicotine or THC. And both nicotine and THC is optional. You can have vape juice that has no nicotine and no THC in it. So the two that you might not recognize so much there is the vegetable glycerin and propylene glycol. So what those are is, with vegetable glycerin, it's an additive to a bunch of different things such as food, cosmetics, and pharmaceuticals. It's derived from vegetable fats, and a lot of the times it's used to sweeten up the taste of the vape juice and really push the flavor that they're trying to go for. And propylene glycol is normally used to absorb extra water or maintain moisture in food, cosmetics, and medicine. It's also, funnily enough, what firefighters use to create fake smoke or fog for training. So these are things that are found in everyday life. You probably come across these chemicals, all of them, without even realizing it. So if these are the only chemicals in vape juice, then why do all of these commercials talk about the cancer-causing ingredients that they put in vape juice? Well, it all comes down to chemical reactions. So when the vape juice is burned, it creates a chemical reaction where most of these chemicals that are advertised as bad come from. You know, we learned in chemistry that anytime you introduce fire to anything, it creates a chemical reaction, and a bunch of different chemicals spring out of that. That's where the aldehydes, the acrolein, and all these cancer-causing ingredients come from. The fire part is also where you'll see people talking about, oh, heavy metals are going into your lungs. That is also due to the fire and the coils that we were talking about. You see, especially if you don't change coils out like the companies recommend that you do, they're going to get worn down, they're going to get dirty, and bits of that metal will eventually break off and burn off, and you're breathing that into your body. The fact is, vaping is bad for you. It will damage your body over time, and it's not sustainable for a long and healthy life by any means. The CDC only recommends vaping to people who are replacing cigarette use, not doing it at the same time, not going from one or the other, replacing cigarette use in an attempt to quit smoking. But for the people on the other side, I know what you're thinking. If the CDC says vaping is a good solution to quit smoking, then what happened in 2019 when all of those people were going to the hospital and dying from vaping? Well, fortunately for the people asking that question, I came prepared with exactly that. So, for a little bit of background to the people who don't know what I'm talking about, between March of 2019 and February of 2020, 2,807 people were admitted to the hospital due to vaping-related lung injury. Of those people, 68 deaths were confirmed. And where it gets very alarming is if you look at the age ranges of those people who were sent to the hospital. 15% of these people were under the age of 18. 37% were between the ages of 18 and 24. 24 were between the ages of 25 and 34, and another 24% were 35 or older. That is an alarming amount of young people who are going to the hospital and dying from vaping-related lung injury. And we've ended up finding out that this was all down to a chemical called vitamin E acetate. Now, I know what you may be asking after that. It's if we knew that it was vitamin E acetate that was the problem, why did it last almost a year before we were able to do anything about it? And the answer to that gets a little tricky because we did. We recognized that vitamin E acetate was the problem, and it was banned in many states from being used in vape juice, and information about it was spread all over the place where companies stopped using it. But to recognize the root of the problem, I think we really need to look at the patients who are hospitalized and then look at what they were smoking and where they got it from, because that's really the key towards this whole outbreak of vaping-related illnesses. So first off, we're going to talk about the people who were hospitalized who use nicotine products. That was around 57% of the people, and 14% of them reported using nicotine products exclusively. Now, of the people who use nicotine products, only around 54% were willing to contribute to where they got it from. But we do know that 69% of these people received product exclusively from commercial sources, which means they went to the store and legally bought it. 17% received product exclusively from informal sources, which means they either had a friend buy it for them because they weren't old enough to buy it, or they have a friend, or they made the vape juice by ordering the different components of it and mixing it themselves. And then 15% received them from both sources. Where it gets very interesting is when we switch over here to THC, and we see that 82% of people hospitalized used products containing THC, and 33% reported using THC products exclusively. Now, right off the bat, we see that both of those numbers are much higher than that of nicotine. And then once you get a little bit further down, you start to realize what was actually happening. See, of the total of that, only around 50% of people were willing to say where they got it from. And you see that 16% of people received products exclusively from commercial sources. That is significantly down from the 69% of nicotine. And then you see that 78% received product exclusively from informal sources. That means that because THC-infused vape juice is not legal everywhere, and even in the places that it is legal, you still have people who are, let's call them what they are, drug dealers, who were making this vape juice themselves and selling it to people. That is an insane problem, especially when those people are really worried about making a profit, not about actually making a product that is legal. And they're using this vitamin E acetate because vitamin E acetate was cheaper and it was easier to use than a lot of other chemicals used in making this juice. And you see drug dealers who aren't staying informed and aren't looking out for their customers, and people are going to the hospital and people are dying, and that's the underlying issue here. You know, you see only 6% of people receive product from both sources. The main problem was that, yes, we recognized that vitamin E acetate was a harm to the public population, but that information took much longer to spread to people who didn't care about people's health. They just wanted to make money. And once we see that and we see the timeline, we can start to notice a few things. So when we step back and we look at all of this at face value, we really do see almost a roller coaster of events of it going up, 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 and then finally coming down. First, you get vitamin E acetate starting being used in the production of vape juice due to it being generally cheaper and easier than some other chemicals that are used in the process of making this juice. Then you see major health problems begin to appear with people going to the hospital, people dying, and people having irreversible lung damage. And then vitamin E acetate being identified as the main problem, and commercial sources stop using it, and it's banned in most states. However, informal sources don't stop using vitamin E acetate until it's banned, and the word of mouth of, hey, this is killing people, starts getting around to even people who aren't looking for that information. And then finally, you start to see a decline in cases. This is where vaping becomes, in this specific circumstance, more dangerous than cigarettes, because cigarettes have been cigarettes for decades upon decades, right? But with vape juice, it's still so untested that yes, it is lighter cigarettes. It is slightly more healthy cigarettes, and I'm not saying healthy is a positive. I'm saying it is killing you slower than cigarettes is. That's not a good thing. Like I said, it is bad for you, and you cannot sustain a healthy life from vaping. You get the same amount of chemicals from cigarettes. It's just on a lighter note. It's still killing you. But where vaping is more dangerous than smoking is because there's that unknown factor of we can test this chemical because it's easier, and it just takes one oversight for thousands of people to be sent to the hospital, 68 people dying and irreversible damage to be done to people. So luckily though, with this specific case, we have seen a decline in cases. As of February 2020, the number of people hospitalized from vaping-related lung injury was down to a single digit per week. The last reported was 4. This is down from its highest point in September of 2019, where 232 people were hospitalized in a week at its highest point, and during that entire month, it was above the 200 mark every single week where people were being hospitalized. Luckily, again, this was due to the fact that we identified that vitamin E acetate was the problem. We raised the legal smoking age from 18 to 21 so that, say, a senior in high school can't buy vaping products for a freshman in high school who would be 14. And then the word of mouth and all of the information about how bad vaping can be for you severely affected the amount of cases, and we were able to get this under control. Now, unfortunately, the CDC did stop reporting people who were hospitalized in February of 2020, and this is because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that it wasn't seen as much of a problem because of the low amount of hospitalizations, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because we were able to get this under control. There is more information out there so that people can read up and make that educated decision for themselves. But it's also a bad thing because we don't really know if cases have been able to go up because of that COVID-19 pandemic. So we really have to keep an eye out for that, and hopefully we can get some newer and more updated information for you soon. Alright, so now let's go to this final little portion of how to tell if your child is vaping. So this is a very important topic to me because at one point I did vape, and after all the research that I did myself, I decided to quit. And so I know all of the tricks of hiding it from your parents and being able to skirt around this topic and say, oh, well, it's really not that bad. Oh, well, it's really not this or not that. So this is a part that I consider myself relatively a specialist on, not including all of the different information that I have. And when we first started this presentation, I talked about how some things can seem like propaganda and they're just bad information or they're blown out of proportion. And so the next slide really accentuates that, and we're going to get to make fun of a little bit of bad information while I give you some good information on top of that. So this is a picture that I found online called "Here are some signs that your teen might be vaping." The first one that they have is increased secrecy. And I'm pretty sure that that's just a side effect of being a teenager. The next one is easily irritated, which, I mean, see what I said about increased secrecy? I mean, they got a lot going on with their body, and they're going to be easily irritated. That's just a teenager. Unusual spending could be one, but it's not very reliable because as old as I feel all of the time, I wasn't a teenager that long ago, so I just remember that I bought some really stupid stuff. And that's not a reliable way to tell if your kid's vaping, you know? And then less time spent at home. If you really look at that, that's just a side effect of being a teenager. They're going to want to be out with their friends. They're not going to want to be home all the time. That's just your little boy or girl growing up. You know, the only one that they got right was the unknown devices. And because of this presentation, you know what those devices are now. So that one's not even right. You know that that's a vape. And if you find a vape in your household, that means somebody in your household vapes, right? Don't ever believe that, oh, I'm just holding it for a friend. No, that is literally never correct, okay? Increase in thirst. I never really experienced this, and I don't know anybody that did. I just think that, like, people are thirsty, and you should drink your water. So I don't know. I don't have any evidence for that, and I couldn't really find anything about that online. Discrete packages. This one could be one if you get something sent to your house where you see it's from a place that sells vapes or there's a vape inside of it. Yeah, someone in your household vapes, but the problem with this one is what I did when I was in high school was we had a friend whose parents didn't care. And so we would just send all of those packages to their house and pick them up from them, or he would bring them to school and bring it to us. So this is not a reliable way just because there's so many different ways around it. And sudden nosebleeds is a lot like increased thirst, where I never experienced that. I never knew anybody who experienced that. And I couldn't really find anything online. I think it's just something that someone made up. I'm really not sure, if I'm being honest. Now, looking at good ways that you can tell if people are vaping, unfortunately, there's not a lot of good examples because unlike cigarettes, it doesn't really linger in places. If you come home early one day and there's, you know, a small fog on the carpet, like, yeah, someone's vaping. But the only two that I could really think of was if a random room in your house smells better than it normally does. And that story really comes from when I was at home for summer vacation one summer. And my dad came home earlier than I thought he was going to, and I had been vaping in my room. And of course, I turn on the fan on high blast, and I open up the window, and I go greet him to stall for a little bit of time. And then I go back to my room, I turn everything off, I close my window. My dad comes into the room not too long after that, and, you know, we're having a conversation, and all of a sudden he stops, and he looks around, and he goes, Are you burning incense? And I had to make up some weird excuse of, no, I just sprayed Axe, I'm sorry, like, I don't know. And it was just so obvious that I was so caught off guard by that question that it's for sure a way to know if your kid's been vaping. And the only for sure way that I know based on my time vaping and my friends who still vape is if they have a personal vehicle, look at their car windows. And I know that that sounds weird, but vaping covers your car windows in almost like it's fogged up, like it's really foggy. But whenever you go to wipe it, it only really disperses it or moves it around. It doesn't make it any clearer. And so that's probably the best way is look at their personal vehicle. That is a very easy tell. If their windows always look fogged up, if it never really goes away, especially now in the wintertime, that it is very easy to see that that is a problem. For sure be on the lookout for that. So for this last part, I wanted to be able to look directly into the camera and speak to anybody watching this on how to prevent your teen from vaping. So I'm just going to put up my sources real quick so that you see that, yes, every bit of information that I got from this was straight from the CDC or personal experience. And I wanted to tell you that the only way that your teen is not going to vape is if they decide not to. There's no measure that anyone can take to fully stop someone from doing something that they want to do short of imprisonment, and that is illegal, right? So really sit your kid down and have that conversation. Open up those channels of communication and treat them like an equal. Treat them and have an adult conversation with somebody, you know? That's what they want. They want to feel like an adult. That's every teenager ever, is they just want to be older and they want to be treated like they are older and that they are an adult because they think that they are, right? So have that mature conversation with them and let them know, listen, I am worried about your health And I want you to be able to live a long and successful life, and I don't want you to be struggling for breath when you're 70 years old. You know, especially that was something that my mom talked to me about. My mom's a smoker, right? And for her to come to me and say, listen, this is how I feel at 29 years old. Um, so yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, like for her to tell that to me really opened my eyes to a bunch of things of yes, this is going to affect my life down the road, and I don't want any of that to happen. So that's going to wrap up our vaping presentation today. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I hope that you're walking away learning something new. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us on social media through our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook page. If you want to view one of these live, we do live virtual presentations. Go to our website at mechsheriff.com. There's going to be a calendar at the bottom of the screen, and you can look to see which presentation you want to see. We have a vaping one, we have a scam one, a human trafficking one, and an active shooter. You can come in, you can ask questions. It's very interactive, and we would love to have a conversation with you. So with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Once again, I'm Nick from the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, and I'm signing off.